For most of our lives, independence feels permanent. We get up each morning, make decisions, go to work, care for our families, solve problems, and manage our daily responsibilities. We become so accustomed to taking care of ourselves that it is difficult to imagine life any other way. Retirement is often pictured as a reward for decades of hard work. We imagine having more time, more freedom, and more opportunities to enjoy the people and activities that matter most. We think about travel, hobbies, grandchildren, and finally slowing down after years of obligations. What we rarely think about is the possibility that one day we may need help with the very things we once did effortlessly. Needing assistance is not something most people plan for emotionally. It is uncomfortable to imagine a future where getting dressed becomes difficult, where driving is no longer safe, or where everyday tasks require support from someone else. For many retirees, the challenge is not simply physical, it is deeply personal. After spending decades caring for others, raising children, supporting a family, building a career, and making independent decisions, the idea of relying on someone else can feel unsettling. Independence becomes part of our identity. It becomes part of how we see ourselves. That is why conversations about long-term care are often postponed. We tell ourselves that it is something that happens to other people. We assume there will be plenty of time later. We avoid the discussion because it forces us to confront realities that most of us would rather not think about. Yet long-term care is not really about aging. It is about change. It is about recognizing that life can become more complicated than we expect. And it is about understanding that preparing for those possibilities is not a sign of weakness. It is one of the most responsible things we can do for ourselves and for the people who care about us. In this episode, we will explore why long-term care is one of the most important conversations many families never have, why the emotional impact is often greater than the financial impact, and how thoughtful preparation can help preserve dignity, independence, and peace of mind. Because the goal is not to live in fear of the future. The goal is to face it with clarity and confidence. One of the most difficult aspects of long-term care is that it rarely affects only one person. When people think about aging, they often focus on themselves. They wonder how they will cope with physical limitations, health challenges, or the possibility of needing assistance in the future. What many people do not fully consider is how those changes can affect the people around them. For a spouse, the transition can be especially challenging. The person who has shared life's responsibilities for decades may suddenly find themselves taking on new roles. Everyday tasks that were once shared can become the responsibility of one person. Decisions that were once made together may become more difficult. Even simple routines can change dramatically. For adult children, the experience can be equally emotional. Many are balancing careers, raising children, paying mortgages, and managing responsibilities of their own. They want to help. They want to do the right thing. But they are often navigating unfamiliar situations while trying to support someone they love. The reality is that caregiving is rarely simple. It may involve difficult conversations, unexpected decisions, and moments of uncertainty. Family members may have different opinions about what should happen next. Emotions can run high because everyone cares, but not everyone sees the situation the same way. What makes these situations particularly difficult is that they often arrive gradually. A missed appointment, a forgotten conversation, a task that suddenly becomes harder than it used to be. Small changes can accumulate over time until a family realizes that additional support is needed. This is why open conversations matter long before a crisis occurs. When families talk honestly about wishes, preferences, and expectations, They create a foundation for better decisions later. Those conversations may not eliminate every challenge, but they can reduce confusion and uncertainty when important choices must be made. Perhaps the most important thing to remember is that needing help does not diminish a person's value. The people who care about us do not see us as a burden because we need support. They see us as parents, spouses, grandparents, siblings, and friends. Long-term care is ultimately about relationships. It reminds us that independence is important, but so is connection. And while none of us can predict exactly what the future holds, we can take steps today that make tomorrow a little easier for the people we love. When people talk about long-term care, the conversation often focuses on practical concerns, medical needs, living arrangements, appointments, support services. Those issues are important, but they are not always the hardest part. For many retirees, the greatest challenge is emotional. It is the realization that certain things may no longer be as easy as they once were. Most of us spend our lives becoming capable. We learn how to solve problems, make decisions, support our families, and take responsibility for ourselves. Over time, independence becomes more than a skill. It becomes part of our identity. We take pride in being able to manage our own affairs. We take pride in helping others rather than needing help ourselves. That is why accepting assistance can be surprisingly difficult. For some people, asking for help feels uncomfortable. For others, it can feel like a loss of control. Even when support is offered with kindness and love, it may still be difficult to accept because it challenges the image we have carried of ourselves for decades. The reality is that needing help does not erase a lifetime of experience, wisdom, or accomplishment. A person is not defined by how many tasks they can complete without assistance. A person is defined by the life they have lived, the relationships they have built, and the impact they have had on others. Yet many retirees struggle with this transition because society often celebrates independence while rarely discussing what happens when independence changes. Perhaps that is why so many families avoid these conversations. No one wants to imagine losing abilities they once took for granted. No one wants to imagine becoming dependent on others. But avoiding the conversation does not make the possibility disappear. In many cases, the strongest act is not refusing help. The strongest act is accepting support when it becomes necessary. There is dignity in planning ahead. There is dignity in communicating wishes clearly. And there is dignity in allowing those who care about us to provide support when we need it. Long-term care is not simply about managing physical challenges. It is about preserving identity, self-respect, and personal choice through every stage of life. Because growing older should never mean losing the qualities that make us who we are. And thoughtful preparation can help protect those qualities for years to come. When people hear the phrase long-term care planning, many immediately think about difficult possibilities they would rather avoid. That reaction is understandable. Most of us prefer to focus on the years ahead, not the challenges that may accompany them. But perhaps planning for long-term care should be viewed differently. Rather than focusing on decline, it can be viewed as an act of respect for ourselves and for the people we love. The truth is that none of us can predict exactly what the future will bring. Some people remain active and independent well into their later years. Others face unexpected health challenges. Most families will experience some combination of both. Because the future is uncertain, preparation becomes valuable. Preparation is not about expecting the worst. Preparation is about creating options. It is about making decisions while we still have the ability to communicate our wishes clearly. It is about ensuring that those closest to us understand what matters most. simple conversations can have a profound impact. Discussing preferences, sharing important information, talking openly about concerns, explaining what quality of life means to us personally. These discussions may feel uncomfortable at first, but they often provide clarity and reassurance for everyone involved. Families frequently discover that the greatest gift is not a legal document or a financial account. The greatest gift is guidance. Knowing what a loved one wants can remove uncertainty during difficult moments and help families make decisions with confidence. Planning also allows us to retain a greater sense of control. When choices are made in advance, they are more likely to reflect our values, priorities, and personal wishes. That is why preparation and dignity are closely connected. Dignity is not something we lose because we grow older. Dignity comes from being treated with respect, having our wishes heard, and maintaining as much choice as possible throughout every stage of life. Long-term care is a conversation many families postpone, but delaying the conversation does not make it less important. In many ways, it makes it more important, because the best time to talk about the future is before the future arrives. And while none of us can eliminate uncertainty, we can prepare for it. Not out of fear, not out of pessimism, but out of love, responsibility, and respect for the people who matter most. That is what long-term care planning is really about. And that is why the conversation is worth having. As we close today, it's important to remember that long-term care is not simply about health care. It's about preserving dignity, maintaining independence for as long as possible, and helping the people you love navigate difficult moments with greater confidence and less uncertainty. None of us can predict exactly what the future will bring, but we can prepare for it. The conversations you have today may become some of the most important gifts you ever give your family. Not because they eliminate every challenge, but because they provide guidance when guidance is needed most. Planning ahead is not about fear. It's about love. It's about responsibility. And it's about making sure your voice continues to be heard even when life becomes more complicated. In a future episode, we'll continue exploring the financial, healthcare, and life planning challenges that retirees and their families face. Because preparing for retirement isn't just about money, it's about maintaining independence, preserving dignity, and helping the people you love navigate an uncertain future with confidence. Thank you for watching the Retirement Briefing. And if you found this discussion helpful, consider subscribing for future episodes focused on the realities of retirement, aging, and long-term planning. We'll see you next time.